The United States has vetoed a UN Security Council resolution on a ceasefire in Gaza. 13 members voted in favor, with the UK abstaining. The US says the immediate humanitarian ceasefire demanded in the document would only benefit Hamas, which it and other countries consider a terrorist group.
An unprecedented move by the UN Secretary General brought them here.
I fear the consequences could be devastating for the security of the entire region.
Antonio Guterres used his power to push for a UN Security Council vote on a ceasefire in Gaza. He got the vote, but not the result he was hoping for.
Against.
The United States vetoed the draft resolution, calling it rushed and incomplete.
Abstenciones.
Abstentions.
Although the United States strongly supports a durable peace in which both Israelis and Palestinians can live in peace and security, we do not support this resolution's call for an unsustainable ceasefire that will only plant the seeds for the next war.
The United Kingdom abstained, saying the draft did not condemn atrocities Hamas committed on October 7th. The final vote tally, 13 for the resolution, 1 against, and 1 abstention.
This is a terrible day for the Security Council. Let me repeat, this is a terrible day for the Security Council. We reject this result and will continue resorting to every legitimate avenue to stop these abhorrent atrocities, including resuming the emergency session of the General Assembly.
The United Arab Emirates drafted the ceasefire call. Here's their representative to the UN speaking after the vote.
Regrettably, and in the face of untold misery, this Council is unable to demand a humanitarian ceasefire. Let me be clear. Against the backdrop of the Secretary General's grave warnings, the appeals by humanitarian actors, the world's public opinion, this Council grows isolated. It appears untethered from its own founding document. What is the message we are sending Palestinians if we cannot unite behind a call to halt the relentless bombardment of Gaza? Indeed, what is the message we are sending civilians across the world who may find themselves in similar situations?
The United Arab Emirates asked what message the Security Council was sending to Palestinians in Gaza who are facing relentless bombardment, and said the inability to reach agreement on a ceasefire left people in Gaza further exposed to untold misery.
DW correspondent Benjamin Alvarez-Gruber has been following the vote from our bureau in Washington.
The deputy U.S. envoy to the United Nations said in New York during this meeting and after the vote was cast that the draft resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza was, and I quote, diverse from reality and would not move the needle forward on the ground in any concrete way. This is not the first time that we see this veto by the United States. We saw it also in October when it said that a ceasefire would only help Hamas, and it's quite similar to the view that Israel also has. But what's interesting here is not just the view of the U.S., but that the UK abstained. But coming back to the U.S., let's hear into what the envoy of the United States had to say in New York.
The result of this rush process was an imbalanced resolution that was divorced from reality, that would not move the needle forward on the ground in any concrete way. And so, we regretfully could not support it. We still cannot comprehend why the resolution's authors declined to include language condemning Hamas's horrific terrorist attack on Israel on October 7, an attack that killed over 1,200 people, women, children, the elderly, people from a range of nationalities, burned alive, gunned down, subject to obscene sexual violence.
So, Benjamin, we see the U.S. contesting the wording of the resolution. Is there any indication it could change its position on a ceasefire, or is that far-fetched at the moment?
For now, it looks far-fetched, but the United Arab Emirates is not alone here. The UAE is the only country that is part of the Security Council of the UN, but today there was a group of delegates from Arab and Muslim majority countries that urged an end to hostilities, and one of them is Saudi Foreign Minister, who said, "Our message is we believe it is absolutely necessary to end the fighting immediately." The US is on the side of Israel here, saying that it would only help Hamas if there is a ceasefire now, but we can expect the international pressure to continue. The US says it's not isolated, but there are many countries that are saying that a ceasefire is needed now, and that's also what the Secretary General Antonio Guterres said, activating this Article 99 of the UN Charter, where he addressed the representatives at the Security Council in New York.
DW correspondent Benjamin Alvarez-Gruber, thank you for that update. Aid agencies are reiterating their warning of a worsening humanitarian situation in Gaza. In the early weeks of the conflict, Israel told Gaza's civilian population to evacuate to the south of the territory, but fighting there has intensified and food, water and other essentials are in short supply.
This is a camp for displaced people in Khan Yunis in the south of the Gaza Strip. Entire families have moved here during the intense fighting. Life is a struggle.
The situation is really difficult. We haven't had bread for a week. There's nothing. Even when we get it, I give it in pieces to my children. My husband and I do not eat. We can go without, but the children can't.
We make a meal last the whole day. So instead of having breakfast, lunch and dinner, we have one meal before sunset because there's nothing. We don't have the financial means. It takes me 3 or 4 hours to get 1 can of beans.
The World Health Organization has warned the humanitarian situation in Gaza is desperate.
Children and people actually begging and crying for water. We're at that level where the most normal and basic supplies are not available anymore.
Meanwhile, there's no let-up in the fighting between Hamas militants and the Israel Defense Forces.
IDF troops continue intense close-quarter combat with Hamas terrorists in Khan Yunis and in the north as we continue to dismantle the Hamas terror state. Over the past day, the IDF has struck around 450 targets in the Gaza Strip from the air, sea and land.
For the medical staff in this hospital in Khan Yunis, it's a different battle they're dealing with. The struggle to help those caught up in the fighting.